So I like to view, people pleaser as a state of mind, as a way of being, as a way of understanding the world. It's not just about a few mindset thoughts that you have to change. It's really about a deep conscious belief that your safety on this planet depends on you being everything for other people. Welcome to Reclaim, a podcast for women, by women, on conversations that matter. I am your host, Thais Sky, international speaker, teacher, and a certified life coach currently working to become a licensed psychotherapist in the state of California. Join me here every week as I offer thoughts and interviews on what it means to reclaim your humanness in this messy world. Hello, everybody. Thais Sky here. Welcome to Reclaim, the podcast. I am your host, and I'm excited to be answering a listener's question on today's episode. I love to do this, to spend some time answering your questions. And so if you have a question for me, email me at info@thaissky.com. You can also message me on Instagram and Facebook and all of the places. I love responding to your questions, and I feel like today's question is so relevant to so many of us, and I cannot wait to get into it. But first, if you are listening to this on Tuesday, September 3rd, well, today doors close for my 8th cohort of Worthy Women Rise. This is my signature program. It is officially now a 5-month program where we are going to explore the worthiness wound and what it means to take up greater space. We are going to explore boundaries, intimacy, connection. We're going to explore our physical bodies and our physical presence, our physical space in the world. We're going to explore what it means to really slow down, to give ourselves permission to untangle from cultural narratives that tell us that productivity is the key to our worthiness, right? We're going to explore what it means to feel sovereign, to feel autonomous. And that means diving into shadow work. That means diving into our unconscious. That means slowly unpacking all of the things that we have learned. Oh, car alarm is going off here. Okay. We are going to learn how it works to break our patterns and what is required in order for us to actually permanently change our lives beyond just mindset. If you are interested in joining us this time around for this amazing program, go to worthywomenrise.com. I will be leading this program again because this is my signature program and I lead it twice a year. The next time I will lead it will probably be spring of 2020. So if you are listening to this after September 3rd and you are interested in learning more, you can go to the website worthywomenrise.com and be added to the waitlist, where you'll be the first to know when enrollment period opens again for the spring 2020 cohort. But if you are listening to this on Tuesday, September 3rd, and you're debating whether or not to join us now or to wait and join us later, let me just say this is the lowest price point that this program will be. I am increasing my price next time around, and also stop putting it off. For the love of God, stop putting off your own vitality. We're living at times where our planet is damaged. Our souls are damaged. We're navigating so much tumultuous energy. This is not the time to continue to put off your desires. This is the invitation to lean into the discomfort of placing yourself first, placing your healing first, so that as you hold a greater amount of space for yourself, you'll find yourself holding a greater amount of space for other people. We start to being able to relate to other people differently, relate to ourselves, relate to the world differently, so that we can take important action to change how it is to live as a human on this planet. So you can learn more at worthywomenrise.com. Okay, here is today's question. Dear Thais, I am a huge people pleaser. As much as I try to say no and be my own person, I find myself constantly putting other people first at the expense of my health, my needs, everything. What can I start to do to prioritize my desires? How can I finally stop doing things for other people and live the life that I want? Also, thank you so much for the podcast. I am an avid listener and I really enjoy the questions that you've answered in the past. These are the types of questions that I also have, and I appreciate you. Yours, Notorious People Pleaser. Okay, Notorious People Pleaser, this is a really, really good question. People pleasing and the topic of people pleasing is something that I think a lot about because I too navigate the tendencies to people please. And I think that many of us, particularly those of us who consider ourselves empathic, consider ourselves highly sensitive, consider ourselves very intuitive, I think many of us navigate people pleasing. And so I want to kind of break down how I understand this concept in hopes that it supports you. Okay, now first, let's define people pleasing, right? People pleasing is basically when we please other people at our own expense. So we kind of have an insidious belief that our needs are not as important as other people. And if we prioritize other people's perception of us, they will like us. Right. And that's what's important here is this idea of likability, or really what's underneath likability is lovability. We want to be loved. And we believe that if we put other people first, when push comes to shove, they'll put us first. They'll put our needs first. Now, I've talked about people pleasing before in the podcast. You should check out the episode I did with Mara Glatzel because we talked about this a little bit. But I have some beliefs about people pleasing that are a little bit out of the norm that I want to share with you. But first, let's back up and let's talk about why we are people pleasers. Because it goes further, like I said, than just this likability factor. It's actually about feeling securely attached in the world. We develop people pleasing tendencies when we are young. And most of us who grew up in a household where we felt like in order for us to be loved, in order for us to be taken care of, in order for our needs to be met, we had to behave in a very specific way, right? We had to diminish kind of our negative, problematic impulses, and we had to instead play nice. We had to be nice. We had to be the good girl. Now, one thing that's interesting to note is that women biologically are more geared towards being emotionally sensitive to other people. Now, some of this is biological. We are in tune with other people's emotionality, facial expressions, etc., because we are more attuned to others, because this is how we attune to our babies, right? Biologically speaking, women, we have this sensitivity that is required in order for us to be a good mother, of being constantly attuned to our baby. But there's also a social conditioning aspect of it too, where young girls are taught, we're taught at a very early age to be the emotional regulator of the house. We witness our mothers be the emotional regulator of the house, and we learn that that is our role, is to be constantly thinking about the male gaze, right? To be thinking about how other people perceive us. We typically tend to be social creatures as humans. And so it's very normal for us to already be oriented towards how other people think about us. So this orientation of being concerned about how other people think about us is, on the one level, very healthy, very normal. People who display behaviors where they really don't give a shit about what other people think about them tend to lean more towards anti-social personality, where they have no worries about the moral behaviors, about the ways that they're hurting other people. So thinking about what other people think about us, that stuff is important. It's a part of our biology. Now, where it becomes problematic is when it becomes a hindrance to our own expression. And that's where we learned that who we are is not okay. And that if we think about other people, if we prioritize how other people think about us, then we maintain a secure attachment. We maintain a relationship with our caregivers. And this primary relationship is critical to our survival. As children, we do everything to make sure that our needs, that the attachment is not broken, so that our needs are met. And so that often looks like is that when we feel that the attachment is at risk because we are prioritizing our own needs or we are selfish, etc., we learn to tune ourselves out and to focus more on other people. And so the desire there is that if we focus on other people, then our needs are somehow going to be met on the journey of thinking about other people, right? So like our needs are going to be met. It's just going to be met by tending to other people. And so here's an interesting article that I will share in the show notes from Bustle, 10 signs that you are being a people pleaser. And I think that this is important, just as like little signs of like, am I a people pleaser or am I not? Here are some things to be looking out for. Number one, it's their world. You just live in it. So this is where people pleasers tend to immerse themselves in the lives of the people they're pleasing. The kind of the word that they use here that I think, or the words that they use here that's really important, is this idea of going with the flow. If you find yourself constantly going with the flow, constantly being like, yeah, it's fine, everything's fine, I can do that, right? That's an invitation that you may be falling into this people-pleasing mentality. Number two, you have no real opinions. Well, of course not, because if you have an opinion, you jeopardize the attachment, right? So having an opinion is unsafe. 3, you bust your butt. And this is where it's talking about you do more than your fair share of the housework or more responsibility than anybody else in the family. You try harder, right? This is a people-pleasing tendency because you're basically putting on all the responsibility of the relationship, hoping that if you do that, the relationship will stay attached. Number 4, you apologize for living. Have you ever met people who apologize all the time? I definitely have. And I find myself doing that too. They apologize for their thoughts, opinions, feelings. They just apologize for just existing. That's a sign that you may be a people pleaser. Number 5, you have everyone's feelings. Call it empathy, call it people pleasing. Basically, people pleasers are so worried about the feelings of others that it brings them misery and pain. This is when we don't like how other people feel. We try to fix how other people feel because we can't tolerate that they are feeling really uncomfortable emotions. Number 6, you're a rescue magnet. So this is where you feel like you need to rescue other people. If somebody is down, you are going to do whatever it takes to get them up. Number 7, you hide from conflict. And this is a big one, right? Why do we avoid conflict? Because as a people pleaser, we view conflict as something that's bad. We view conflict as a threat to the secure attachment. And so we avoid conflict at all possible costs. Number 8, you never enjoy yourself. Yeah, because you're constantly thinking about other people, right? You're thinking about throwing that perfect party instead of focusing on having fun. Number 9, you feel taken advantage of. Of course, that's the part of being a people pleaser, is that the lack of boundaries means that other people are going to take you for granted. And number 10, you live for praise and constantly need validation from others. Now, it's interesting, as I'm reading this article about being a people pleaser, there's a lot of overlap between this idea of codependency, which is a word that's thrown around a lot, where it's like you are dependent on the other person. And so there is a sense of you have to please them because you are dependent on them for your happiness. I don't particularly like the idea of codependency because I think we are all dependent on each other, right? I like the concept of interdependency, where we all need each other. And attachment is a requirement to our happiness. It's a requirement to our vitality, to our well-being, to our mental health. And so I worry about using the word codependency, that it means that like we can't depend on others at all. And I don't think that that's how we should be perceiving this idea of dependence. I think we do need to depend on each other. It's just that with people pleasing specifically, or the archetype of a people pleaser, is that you somehow learned along the ways that your own needs are dangerous to the attachment. Your own needs get in the way of you being attached. And when it comes to either your needs or attachment always comes first. So I like to view, people pleaser as a state of mind, as a way of being, as a way of understanding the world. It's not just about a few mindset thoughts that you have to change. It's really about a deep conscious belief that your safety on this planet depends on you being everything for other people. Here's what's important to note. We think we're being thoughtful, nice, and kind and accommodating people when we continuously swallow our own needs for other people. But in reality, what we are doing is we're preventing genuine relating, which is ironically what we want in the first place, right? We cannot be in an intimate relationship with another human being if we are completely pushing away all of who we are in order to be all of who we think the other person wants us to be. It's just not possible because intimacy requires us to be in the relationship, which means showing up in the relationship. And we can't show up in the relationship if we're hiding a part of who we are, right? So the irony of people pleasing is that it's actually not getting you what you want. It's a skewed way. It's a developmental way. It's a way that we learned. But now as adults, we're finding that way, while it helped us as children, is now preventing the very thing that we want. Okay, I want to read a Instagram post that I wrote here. I wrote, wherever we have built an identity around making other people feel good, we will find a deep fear of being found out, being unacceptable, being not enough. So the both of them, they have to be together. They have to go together. Wherever there is an identity of being a people pleaser, there will be a fear of being unacceptable and not enough. So living with the fear that if we do not perform, if we do not make other people happy, if we do not say or do the right thing, we will be found out as unlovable and not good enough is a real thing. Many of us have built whole experiences and identities around pleasing other people, afraid that if we let them down, we will be a failure. The fear runs the behavior, which then keeps the fear alive. It's a painful cycle. Where does this fear come from? Typically, when we explore further, we will find that those of us who orient ourselves around the emotional well-being of others at our own expense felt that we had to do that as children in order to secure attachment with our caregivers, right? That's what I've been talking about. This could be for a variety of reasons. Maybe we experienced the parent who modeled the pattern of putting others' needs before our own. Maybe there was abuse or addiction in the home, and we learned that we have to step in and look after others. Maybe we had a demanding parent and we internalized the message that there was no space for our own needs. Or maybe we served as an emotional extension of our primary caregiver. That is, our existence served as a way to make our parents feel better about themselves or as a source of comfort. Now, for many of us, it feels like focusing on the moods of others is just who we are, an external prison. But the good news is it's not the case. Rather, this behavior is a defense, a learned way to keep us safe. And as we cultivate a new sense of safety within ourselves, heal our worthiness wound, and expand our capacity to be with uncomfortable emotions, we will no longer need this behavior. The invitation here is to notice when we do this and see how you can tend to your little girl in those moments. This little girl who feels that this is her only option if she wants love. As we reparent ourselves with love and care, we start becoming more interested in our own emotional state than the emotionality of others. Okay, so reparenting is this concept that I've talked about in the past in previous episodes of Reclaim. This is also a concept that I explore further in Worthy Women Rise. But it's the idea of learning how to parent our inner child the way we were not parented. We're basically now meeting our own needs. And as we meet our own needs, as we tend to the little girl within, we start to unhook ourselves from the defense mechanisms that we learned for how to get love and attachment. Part of reparenting also means cultivating a relationship with our emotions, because so much of people pleasing is wanting other people to avoid feeling uncomfortable emotions, particularly uncomfortable emotions towards you. And so developing a different relationship with our uncomfortable emotions allows us then the ability to free us up from having to manipulate other people into feeling things towards us. Because here is the truth of the matter, my friend. People pleasing is manipulation. It is a way that we manipulate other people into liking us. It's a way that we try to deny our own needs, prioritize the needs of others in order to get what we want. It is manipulation, and it is a form of control. People pleasing is not this like victim, kind of poor me, I don't get anything out of this type experience. It's actually a very smart defense that we learned as a child to getting what we want, because what we are attempting to do is to control the other person. It is a false sense of control because we can't really control other people. And believe it or not, people are going to have their opinions of us, whether we people please or not. So it's a false sense of control, but it's definitely an attempt to control other people's emotions and perception of us. It is not a healthy way to build a relationship. Relationship means that both people come into it equally. And so what we want is to start to, like I said in the post, find the ways that we are people pleasing, find the ways that we diminish our needs in efforts to belong, and see how we can cultivate that belonging within ourselves so that we do not need to control other people. Because here's the thing, while control may feel like a helpful way to manage anxiety, particularly the anxiety of not knowing how other people think about us, it only really serves to continue to suppress the emotions that are needing to be tended to. Does that make sense? Because the reality is that control is an attempt to address an unmet need, a belief that we are out of control, most likely stemming, again, from a childhood that was chaotic, uncertain, or painful. So being controlling offers an illusion of certainty, and it can feel really tantalizing to believe this lie, but it is a lie. If you investigate where you tend to control things, whether it's your body, diet, or how other people act or how they perceive you, what you typically find underneath is a big dose of anxiety. And wherever there's anxiety, there's likely to be emotions that are being suppressed. That's ultimately what anxiety is. It's unattended to emotions that feel too big to face. So people pleasing, if it's a form of control, that means that there is some emotions, there is some reparenting to do, and there's some emotions that need to be tended to. And it's very valid if we weren't taught how to be with our complicated emotions, our big emotions, that we don't know what to do with them, so we try to suppress it and try to deny it. It makes a lot of sense. And now it's our opportunity to unlearn and relearn what it means to have emotions. And this is something I have talked about extensively on this podcast. I invite you to go back through previous episodes to learn more. Okay. Okay. So what else do I want to say about this? Oh, here's something that I've been thinking a lot about when it comes to people pleasing, is that most people pleasers, particularly the more kind of extreme people pleasing you go, what we tend to find is a large swath of unattended to anger. Anger is an emotion that tells us where our boundary has been violated, where our needs are not being met, where we are not being heard, where we are feeling like someone crossed our value system. And so because people pleasing is all about dismissing our boundaries for the boundaries of others, what we tend to find is that anger is gone to the unconscious. Most of us as people pleasers, we were also told that anger was not okay. We were not okay to experience anger. We were not okay to express anger, that anger was bad and wrong. So it makes a lot of sense that anger got diminished, got suppressed, and so did our capacity to kind of build boundaries. Anger helps us to build boundaries. It's not the only thing that helps us build boundaries, but it is definitely a useful piece of information. And so, of course, as people pleasers, we tend to have unconsciously a lot of anger. And that anger, because anything that's suppressed tends to want to come out, is attempting to come out. And it comes out in all sorts of ways, like resentment and frustration and anger. Well, it can come out as anger in other ways that maybe feel more socially acceptable. Typically, it's that anger is then turned inwards. It creates a sense of depression. It creates a sense of unworthiness, self-hatred, self-disgust, etc. So if we are to kind of heal this people-pleasing and develop new behaviors of showing up as all of who we are in relationships, it's really important to develop a different relationship with your anger. First, to acknowledge that anger is valid, anger is normal, anger is healthy. And wherever anger is coming up, that's information for you to use. And so developing a different relationship with your anger is a helpful component of untangling ourselves from people pleasing. This is a place that I recommend for you, notorious people pleaser. You can start prioritizing your own desires by looking at first where you're not, getting very clear around the behavior, looking to see what you're hoping to get by diminishing your desires. And you give yourself plenty of space to be angry at your caregivers for not honoring your needs in the first place, being angry with yourself, being angry with other people. Like, let yourself be angry. Express that anger in a way that feels supportive for you. Punching things, right? Like a punching bag is a great way to release some of the anger. Going into the car and screaming, putting really loud music, hitting a pillow. It's really helpful to elicit anger in a very physical way. Going on a run and being very intentional of letting and purifying the anger. It's writing, journaling, giving yourself permission to write and journal whatever you want. Be really unfiltered with it. Let that anger come out. Okay. And here's one more kind of final thought for you, is that when it comes to people pleasing, first, it's going to be uncomfortable to take up space. If we have been accustomed to taking up no space at all, it's going to feel uncomfortable to take up space. This is normal. It's not going to feel, easy at first. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means that you're unlearning a pattern. And in order to unlearn a pattern, we have to be willing to do things differently. And that means it's going to get uncomfortable. That's just how it looks like. And also, you have to be persistent. You have to be persistent. You have to be unapologetic. You have to really hold yourself to the fire of doing things differently. Because a lot of times when we're undoing the people-pleasing mentality, we think, if I just prioritize my needs once, that's all it'll take. But I think we also carry this expectation that if people really cared about us, they would just do what we asked them to do the first time we ask. And I think that that's a way that we then kind of prove to ourselves, see, this method won't work. Expressing my needs doesn't work, and I should just not do it anymore. When the fact of the matter is, no, we just have to continue to advocate for ourselves. This is a continued conversation that we must have with ourselves and with those in our lives. It's not a one-time thing. I know it's hard enough to give ourselves permission to have our wants and needs, and then it's even harder to then ask for it to be tended to. But if we want to get our needs met, we have to be persistent about it, both to ourselves and to others, because your needs are important. So you have to treat it as such. You have to proclaim it again and again and again until you can own it. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to prioritize your needs. You are allowed to be comfortable with the fact that people are not comfortable with you. This is a slow and steady process. It takes time to unpack this stuff, to get to the root of the people pleasing, to really land in your heart how disappointing it is that your needs were not met. This is all important healing work. Let it take time. Stay persistent. Stay persistent, my friend. Particularly you, notorious people pleaser. You got this. Your needs are important. Go let out that anger and let me know how it goes. Hopefully this has supported all of you who are people pleasers at heart. Know that this behavior, this set of understandings of the world can change. I believe in you. It's a slow and steady process, but it's got to start. So start now, my friends. Start now. I'm sending you all of my love, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to Reclaim the Podcast. This podcast represents the opinions of Thais Sky and her guests to the show. The content of this podcast are for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional psychological, psychiatric, or medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or mental disorder.